Research shows that simply keeping your phone out of your bedroom could significantly improve your mental health. It sounds too simple to be true, but this small change addresses one of the core mechanisms social media companies use to maintain their grip on your attention: 24/7 accessibility. In this documentary, we'll examine why such a basic intervention works and reveal many more practical strategies to protect yourself from the invisible manipulation happening every time you open these apps. The mental health crisis linked to social media isn't inevitable. Understanding the engineered addiction is the first step toward breaking it. What if I told you that your social media apps weren't designed to connect you with friends, but to connect you to your screen? The truth behind these platforms is far more calculated than most realize. Behind the colorful interfaces and friendly notifications lies an uncomfortable reality. Social media companies employ entire teams of behavioral psychologists and data scientists, but their job isn't to improve your life or relationships. Their singular focus? Maximizing the time you spend on their platforms. This isn't some unfortunate side effect. It's the entire business model. These digital environments exploit fundamental psychological vulnerabilities in ways traditional media never could. Think about television. It had natural breaks between programs, commercials that gave you a moment to consider turning it off. Social media eliminated these decision points deliberately. Let's talk about the variable reward system, one of the most powerful psychological tools in these apps. Have you noticed how you never know when you'll get a notification? This uncertainty creates a powerful compulsion loop in your brain. It's exactly how slot machines work. The unpredictability of rewards keeps you checking, pulling that lever again and again, hoping for a hit of dopamine. Except in this case, you're checking your phone over 100 times each day. The architects of these platforms understand exactly what they've built. Take Sean Parker, Facebook's first president, who candidly admitted, "God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains." This wasn't some offhand comment, it was a confession from someone who helped create the very system now consuming billions of hours of human attention daily. Consider the infinite scroll, a seemingly simple design choice with profound psychological impact. Before this feature, websites had natural endpoints where you'd need to actively click next page to continue. That moment of decision was crucial. It gave you an opportunity to disengage. By eliminating this friction point, platforms remove the natural cues telling you it's time to stop. The result? Hours lost in a passive consumption state scrolling through content that never ends. The neurological impact is striking. Research has demonstrated that these engagement mechanisms activate the same brain circuits involved in addiction to substances like nicotine, alcohol, and cocaine. Your brain's reward pathways can't distinguish between a notification and these chemical substances. Both trigger similar dopamine responses that reinforce behavior. What's particularly troubling is how these platforms have systematically enhanced these addictive qualities over time. Early social media was relatively static. You'd check in occasionally to see updates from friends. Today's versions employ sophisticated algorithms that learn precisely what content will keep you engaged longest, creating personalized addiction pathways unique to your psychological profile. Let's be clear about something fundamental. You are not these companies' customer, you are their product. Every minute you spend scrolling generates advertising revenue. The business incentive is clear. Maximize engagement at all costs, regardless of psychological impact. Your attention is literally being sold to advertisers in real time as you scroll. The platforms track over 52,000 personal attributes to predict how you'll respond to content. They measure precisely how long you pause on certain posts, which emotions trigger engagement, and what time of day you're most vulnerable to extended sessions. This isn't casual observation, it's industrial-scale psychological profiling. What's the real-world impact? Over the past decade, we've witnessed a 65% increase in youth mental health hospitalizations. This alarming rise directly correlates with the proliferation of these engineered addiction systems. Young people with still developing prefrontal cortices responsible for impulse control are particularly vulnerable to these manipulative designs. This vulnerability among young people isn't just about impulse control, it's about identity itself. The teenage brain, still writing its own story, becomes the perfect target for social media's most insidious psychological weapon, the transformation of belonging into a quantifiable competition. Adolescence has always been a time of searching and uncertainty, But now these platforms have created something unprecedented, a numerical score for social acceptance through likes, followers, and comments. Think about what happens during these formative years. Teenagers are naturally preoccupied with questions like, who am I and where do I fit in? Their brains are literally rewiring themselves, creating neural pathways that will shape their adult lives. This developmental stage makes them uniquely vulnerable to feedback systems, and social media companies know this perfectly well. When a teenager posts content online, something remarkable happens in their brain. Three distinct neurological systems activate simultaneously: social cognition, how they perceive others' reactions; self-referential cognition, how they perceive themselves; and social reward systems, the pleasure derived from acceptance. This creates an extraordinarily intense neurological experience that adults with their fully formed identities simply don't experience with the same intensity. But what makes this truly dangerous is how these platforms have deliberately amplified teenage vulnerability. Think about it. They've made social validation completely visible and quantifiable to everyone. Your popularity, your social worth, your very identity becomes reduced to metrics everyone can see. This turns normal teenage social development into something it was never meant to be: a public, measurable competition with devastating psychological consequences. The research confirms what many parents already suspect. Studies have found that adolescents who use Instagram and Facebook for social comparison experience significantly higher rates of depressive symptoms. This isn't a coincidence or a mere correlation. It's by design. The algorithms detect vulnerable users and continue feeding them harmful content because it drives engagement, regardless of the psychological damage inflicted. Girls face a particularly brutal version of this trap. Research shows that 33% of teenage girls report Instagram makes them feel worse about their bodies. Yet instead of protecting these vulnerable users, the algorithms continue serving them more of the same harmful content. Why? Because negative emotional responses, anxiety, inadequacy, fear of missing out, drive obsessive checking behaviors that translate to more screen time and more advertising revenue. And here's what's truly alarming. These platforms aren't just affecting teenagers' emotions, they're physically reshaping their developing brains. Frequent social media multitasking has been shown to weaken the hippocampus, which is critical for long-term memory formation. Simultaneously, it strengthens the striatum, the brain region associated with reward-seeking behavior. This fundamentally alters how teenagers learn and process information during a critical developmental window. This exploitation of belonging needs explains why simple advice like just use it less is so ineffective. When a teenager's entire social ecosystem exists within these apps, disconnecting doesn't just mean missing updates, it feels like social suicide. Their friendships, their group identities, their invitations to real-world events all happen inside these platforms. Asking them to disconnect is asking them to voluntarily exile themselves from their community during the developmental stage when belonging matters most. The consequences are staggering. Teenagers who spend more than 3 hours daily on social media face twice the risk of experiencing depression and anxiety symptoms compared to lighter users. Their developing sense of self becomes hostage to algorithmic manipulation specifically designed to maximize their engagement regardless of psychological cost. Here's the thing, friends. While we've uncovered how these platforms are engineered to keep us hooked, the good news is we're not powerless against them. Setting specific goals for social media usage can be remarkably effective. As Kiarai Priwit from Cleveland Clinic suggests, having someone hold you accountable for these goals makes them even more powerful. One brilliantly simple strategy: keep phones out of your bedroom at night. Clinical psychologist Neda Gould notes this separation helps you detox from your device while improving sleep quality and reducing anxiety. For children and teenagers especially, outdoor activities offer a powerful antidote to screen addiction. Dr. Kimberly Bennett points out that being in nature actually lowers stress, improves mood, and builds resilience. Remember, we don't need to abandon technology completely. Dr. Emily Samer warns about social media's potential to cause profound mental illness in children, but the solution lies in balance, reducing screen time while increasing face-to-face interactions. These platforms may have been designed to manipulate us, but with these strategic boundaries, we can reclaim our mental well-being and redesign our relationship with technology on our own terms.